Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Hockey Writers Roundtable and in our free agency coverage here. And we're going to do a fun episode here on some superlatives in early days of free agency. Although a lot of the signings have been done, it's just there's still a pretty big bulk of players that haven't been signed, but most of the big guys are gone. A lot of activity in the first couple of days really has been pretty dead in the last week or so since free agency opened, but joined in by Derek Olsen and Jacob Billington again here, and we're going to talk a bit of superlatives and just have some fun here. Derek, how's it going?
Going pretty well. It's we got a heat warning where I live, so I'm ducking the weather and staying inside. So it's a pleasure to talk to you guys while I'm doing it.
Yeah, same here. I've got over 32, 33 degrees outside, and I'm in a basement, so it's nice and cool. All right, so yeah, Jacob, how's it going? Is it hot where you are too, or?
It's really muggy where it's pretty rainy, but by tomorrow it's going to be 38 plus with the humidity. So not too happy about that.
Yeah, well, it is the summer after all, and we can say the dog days of summer here for hockey, where there's no news or little to no news, and we're just waiting for stuff to happen. But so we're just gonna let's do some superlatives, have some fun doing so here. So let's start with best signing so far. Now, like I say, there's a lot to choose from, so I'll start with you, Derek. What's, in your opinion, the best signing so far here?
Yeah, I think the easy answer is the Nashville signings or maybe just Stamkos. I mean, they signed arguably the best three available players, but I think their contracts may age poorly personally. So I picked something else just to be fun. I think the Sharks signings of Toffoli and kind of Wenberg are going to be super beneficial. This is a very young team that's going to be welcoming, obviously, 2024 first overall pick, Macklin Celebrini, as well as 2023 fourth overall pick, Will Smith, into the lineup. They're both brimming with potential, but can't be forced into those big minutes right away, as it'll wreck their development, right? We've seen this over the years happen time and time again. The Sharks have, veterans like Logan Couture and Michael Granlund and a few others, but Toffoli and Wenberg give them either one very solid veteran top line that can handle the big minutes, and then Wenberg and a couple other veterans could provide that checking line, and then that leaves Coach Ryan Warsofsky with a bit easier minutes to give to those kids, more offensive zone starts, second power play time, and just not having to play against the other team's top pairing defenders or their best forwards every night. Or he could deploy Toffoli alongside a Celebrini or Smith, and he can mentor them, on the ice that way. But either way, those signings like that will help those young players into the league, ease them in. They can get a taste, they can score some goals, boost their confidence, and just let them learn the game at this level slowly. Toffoli's term might become a bit of an issue one day in the future, as it's a 6-year deal and he's 32. But the team will probably be much more competitive by then, and he could essentially switch places with the kids and head into the bottom six at that time. So I really like those two signings personally.
Yeah, I questioned Toffoli going to the Sharks at first. I'm like, he's a veteran. He's going to a rebuilding team. Does he not want to win right now? I mean, he may just want to do the mentoring thing now, and he's won his cups, and he just wants to move into that role. That's great for him. And the Sharks are an up and coming team, and now that Celebrini got his entry level, he's going to be playing there next season. So yeah, it should be fun for some of these veterans to play with these young guys. Jacob, what about you? What's best signing so far?
I am going to stick with Nashville, but it's not going to be Stamkos and it's not going to be Brady Shea. I think it's going to be Jonathan Marchessault.
Hmm.
I see a lot of people being hesitant about this signing, and I think that it's a slam dunk no brainer. And I'm surprised that it only came in at 5.5 million.
Hmm.
Obviously, just over a year ago, he won the Conn Smythe Trophy with 25 points in 22 games. This year, he had a career year with 42 goals and 70 points. And to get him for 5 years at $5.5 million is ridiculous. And he was a late bloomer. He's 33 years old now, but he came into the league at 26, was his first full season, and he had some great years. But then, yeah, now he's here going into free agency at 33 years old, and feels like he's just kind of getting started in the league.
Hmm. Yeah, Marchessault, it seems like he's a younger guy, but he isn't. He is up there. But yeah, late bloomer and starting to be not starting, but he is an elite player in the NHL now. And I yeah, Nashville sure got I'd say probably a bit of a bargain on that with even the money that he's getting. He didn't get a
Yeah.
huge raise on what he was getting paid before. So yeah, really good deal there. Mine is Vladimir Tarasenko in Detroit, which he just signed with the Red Wings. And this is a team that's, up and coming to be a playoff team. They were on the cusp. And their top six is pretty loaded now. I mean, a couple veterans with Patrick Kane and Tarasenko, who both played for the Rangers too, last season. So I think they're going to end up being really good for the young guys there too, with Raymond and Tarasenko's going to be, I mean, he's again not the same player he is anymore, but he could still score 25, 30 goals, I think, in the right situation. And he's going to be surrounded with some pretty talented players. So, and to get him for what they got at a low term, only 2 years, that's a great signing for the Red Wings. And I think he's going to be really good there too. All right, next up, I'll start with you, Jacob. Most likely to succeed on their new team here.
I think it's going to be Brett Pesce. I think there's a huge opportunity for him in with the New Jersey Devils. He signed a really good deal, fairly team friendly. I expected it to be a bit higher, closer to the 6.5, 7 million range, especially in the open market. But they moved out John Marino for him, and so the pressure is going to be high because Marino's a good defenseman, but he also has Simon Nemec, who is knocking on the door for that top four right-handed defensive spot. So it's not like he's just walking into an opportunity. He's going to have to earn it. But I think that he is the kind of player that is absolutely going to do everything in his power to earn and keep that spot.
Mm-hmm. I think he's going to be, again, way more, I think more offense. He has more offense to him than Marino. And I think, yeah. So, I mean, he may be able to get a bit more points and add more to their back end offensively too. Derek, what about you? Who do you think is going to be most likely to succeed?
Yeah, I hate to beat a dead horse because I know a lot of writers and media are covering it, but I have to join. And I'm gonna say the Oilers, Jeff Skinner.
Yeah.
I just think that it's going to be another very successful Oilers free agent signing. They already proved that Zach Hyman was an excellent gamble, and this could be obviously not the same, but very similar. I mean, Jeff Skinner may not have any business making $9 million a season, but at $3 million, I think he offers tremendous value. Yeah, he's obviously scored 40 goals a couple of years ago. He's a 9-time 20-goal scorer, 6-time 30-goal scorer. He's been inconsistent in his career, but he seemed to kind of have it figured out in the last 3 seasons at least. He had a down year with 24 goals and 46 points, which interestingly, I wrote it down. It would have been 4th in goals and 6th in points on the Oilers last year. So the team still struggled with secondary scoring. I know they made it obviously to the Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final, but obviously they lost by a goal, right? And you have McDavid and Draisaitl getting shut down by the other team's best players. It's important to have those other players that can step up. And I think Skinner can be one of these guys. He's not going to be a spring chicken anymore at 32, but he's going to be extra motivated for a few reasons. Buyout players tend to have an uptick in production due to the proverbial chip on their shoulder.
Yeah.
Right. He also he wants to produce so he can have that one more big ticket contract before he retires. And there's not many better ways to do so than playing with McDavid or Draisaitl and potentially on the best power play in the entire league. And then lastly, for those who aren't aware, Jeff Skinner's never made the playoffs.
Yeah.
He's got the NHL record, probably one of the worst NHL records for most games played without a postseason game. And he's played 1,006. So he's gonna want to break through there and have that debut. And I mean, not many 32-year-olds are having a postseason debut, so look for him to really give it everything he has. 14 seasons of tension, he gets to exact that. That'll feel good. And even in that case, I mean, he's running out of chances at a Stanley Cup, even though he's never had one. Right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of external and internal motivation for Jeff Skinner to succeed. And I mean, he's playing with McDavid or Draisaitl, odds are. So I think this is going to be a heck of a contract.
Yeah, I think Skinner, well, he's going to a great situation here instead of playing those two guys, or one of them at least. I mean, and the thing is, he'll play with both of them on the power play for sure. And yeah, great signing for the Oilers. We'll see how he does. All right. Speaking on that, he could actually fall into this category too. Best bargain, although there's quite a few that you could pick from. Derek, who do you think is the best bargain? I wrote an article on the Substack for premium Substack. I haven't checked that out. Check that out. I picked a few bargain guys, but who's yours the best bargain right now? Who's going to end up being the best bargain, I guess?
Yeah, I'm glad you made that point right there, because best bargain can kind of go either way, right?
Yeah.
There's on paper contracts right now, like the 1 year low value deals that are, they're just going to work out, odds are. But it's those 6, 7 year contracts that, right now look maybe ooh, but they see, like Zach Hyman. I mean, it's a great example, right?
Yeah.
And speaking of him, I had Jake DeBrusk's contract as my best bargain.
Mm.
You're gonna like that, I'm sure, Matthew. Um, 7 years, 38 million, 38.5 million is exactly the same figure as Zach Hyman's contract with the Edmonton Oilers, which I thought was kind of funny. However, obviously Hyman signed his at 29 and DeBrusk is just 27.
Yeah.
So that's already playing into the Canucks' favor. Scored at least 25 goals 3 times now, and he averages around the 45, 47 point mark per season. But that number, I think, is going to balloon in the Canucks organization, playing either alongside JT Miller, who scored over 100 points, or Elias Pettersson, who's, again, one of the best centers in the league. So there's been clamoring for him about him needing a fresh start for the last, it seems like almost his whole career, and he finally has it now. So he has that chip off his shoulder, and he doesn't have to worry about contract security, so he can relax in that regard too. He's set, this is where I'm playing for the next 7 years. Let's do this. And he's everything that the Canucks need, really. It's a win-win for both. I mean, he gets to play in a Canadian hockey market again and come home, so he'll be motivated in that way. And it's also one that has a high chance of winning in the near future. Obviously, the Canucks, a couple more bounces and they might have, I don't know, I don't want to say ended up in the Stanley Cup final. Still, he's a rugged power forward-esque player who can score in a variety of ways, and he's going to thrive, I think. He also doesn't get recognition for his defensive game. When I looked, he had over 100 hits this last season. He had 48 block shots and 36 takeaways. So I thought that was quite impressive. And we usually just look at the goals and assists. So that's super important. And I mean, in that regard, he could potentially factor in big time to the Canucks' penalty kill in addition to their power play, which you don't usually get for under $1 million or $6 million bucks a season. So look for him to break out and potentially score 30 and hopefully get the Canucks deeper in the playoffs.
I really like the DeBrusk signing. I just hope it doesn't end up being the last time the Canucks signed a Bruins free agent. That was Louis Eriksson to a long-term deal. That didn't work out. But yeah, DeBrusk way younger than I believe Eriksson was when they signed him. So I think he's a better chance of working out, and I really like the signing, at least at this point. We'll see if it ends up being a good one later on. Jacob, what about you? Best bargain? They can go different directions here. You could go with how I wrote the article, or like what Derek said with bargain for even a long-term contract.
Yeah, and there's a lot of options. We'd already talked about Edmonton a lot, but I will just give a shout out to Victor Arvidsson. I think that he belongs in this conversation. I already mentioned Pesce, Matt Duchene going back to Dallas for $3 million. Dmitry Kulikov, 4 years at $1.15 million. I think that's a fantastic one. But I'm going to go with the Carolina Hurricanes signing Sean Walker to 5 years at $3.6 million. I think that that's a fantastic deal, and he's going to be they just got rid of Pesce, who signed for 5.5, I believe, and they just got the next Pesce. Like, Sean Walker plays a very similar game and is going to be in a very similar role, and they are saving $1.9 million on that cap space. So I think that Sean Walker's going to fit in under Rod Brind'Amour very, very well, and probably going to play alongside Scott Morrow. I think that would make a lot of sense and be a mentor for the young guy coming into the NHL. And then, I mean, once Alexander Nikishin comes over to the NHL, everybody's up for grabs. But I think as of right now, I think that's one of the best bargain deals.
Yeah, I'm going to go direction because I wrote an article on it, but I'm going Cam Atkinson in Tampa Bay. 1 year deal, and he's getting he's going to get an opportunity in the top six playing with them. I mean, everyone's saying probably third line, but I think he's going to get, because Stamkos isn't there anymore. Who's going to take his minutes? And Atkinson has probably the best chance of being that, if he can stay healthy, that is, and return to even a 30 goal form or even a 25 to 30 goal form. I don't think he's 40 goals anymore, but I think he could definitely, playing with Braden Point, playing with guys like that. Man, he's going to have an opportunity to even scoring 20 goals of what he's getting paid is a ridiculous bargain. So I think Atkinson right now, I mean, in that the definition of potentially being a bargain and a steal with what he's getting paid. So I'm going Atkinson with this one. All right, most underrated, and I'll start with you, Jacob. A most underrated signing right now.
We talked about this already, Matthew, and I think that this is a pretty hot take. I did see some people agreeing with it once I shared it, but Chandler Stevenson, I think it is the most underrated signing of the whole free agency period. I see people saying that they hated it. I see people saying that signing that contract is a fireable offense. I think that it is one of the most underrated deals in free agency. So he's getting $6.5 million for 7 years. He is a 60-point guy for the most part. Probably could even take a little bit of a step. He filled in as the first line center when the Vegas Golden Knights were going through some things, and obviously, like, they acquired him for a 5th round pick, and all of a sudden he became their first line center.
Yeah,
he has so much potential, and at his age, it's weird to say potential, but I think that with his two-way play, fantastic two-way play. I don't know if he has any Selke votes in his history. I'll actually look that up really quick while I talk. But he has the 60 points as well. He has so many things to his game that help him that just help him thrive. And I think he's going to fit into Seattle really well as a mentor for Shane Wright and Matty Beniers, and just help out with all those things. So
I liked the Stevenson signing. I wanted the Canucks to get into the bidding for him, because I think he would have really fit in Vancouver too. But yeah, very versatile, very good top six center. He can play wing. He can do it all. He can play on the power play, penalty kill. Yeah, very, very good top six center. I don't know. I really liked that signing for Seattle too.
And he got one Selke vote in 2023.
Yeah, I thought I saw a Selke vote on his hockey reference page at one point. So yeah, that makes sense though. He is a very good center. All right, Derek, over to you. Who's your most underrated signing at this point?
Yeah, likewise. I mean, it's another one that's a bit under the radar as opposed to Stevenson, but I'm saying the Wild signing Yakov Trenin. The 4-year deal worth 14 million, so 3.5 per season. Really, obviously, a guy that's not going to fill the net. He is a bottom 6 forward, but he's a solid forward. He's widely considered to be one of the hardest to play against league wide. I've heard a lot of interviews with players that just do not like playing against Yakov Trenin. He plays all 3 forward positions. He blocks shots. He kills penalties. He forechecks and back checks hard. I mean, he's a relatively big dude. He's 6'2", 200, and he's only 27 years old. And he just put up the most points in a season as well. It was only 27, so it wasn't crazy, but still, the fact that he's showing a bit more confidence in that regard is good. But in general, I mean, maybe he's not exactly what the Minnesota Wild need to get to the next level, but he's adding middle six grit at a very palatable AAV and not much commitment at 4 years. He'll only be 31 at the end of it. But anytime you can add a player like that who you can rely on, I think it makes it easier for those other players to, like, it'll take a lot of pressure off of Marco Rossi and Matt Boldy and those younger guys. You guys handle the scoring. Let me and Marcus Foligno and those other guys take on the D, and fight and stuff like that. I mean, so in that regard, I think this will be a bit of an underrated contract, and I only say underrated just because you don't really talk about Yakov Trenin, right? I mean,
yeah.
So on the Cam and Strick podcast, they had Marcus Foligno on this week, I guess, last week, and they were recording as the free agency started to open right before, and so they kind of broke that news that that Trennan signed with the Wild to Marcus Foligno, and he was like, "Oh, thank God, I hate playing against that guy."
That's great.
There you go.
There's actually a good segue to mine because Kiefer Sherwood is my most underrated. I mean, Canucks signed him, and Quinn Hughes apparently when he heard that that they signed him, he's like, "Great! I hated playing against that guy. He was so in the first round against the Predators." And yeah,
Right.
I looked up he had over 200 hits or 200 and close to 230, I think. And that's like on par of what Dakota Joshua did for the Canucks. And some people are saying that he could be the next Dakota Joshua coming in as at a low contract, not really expected to do anything and become a bit of an underrated scorer, even a scorer. Because what did he have? I think he had over 10 goals. I think he was in double digits. And that's a guy that physicality brings to the bottom six, score when he gets the chance. I think that's a great signing for the Canucks. And maybe flew under the radar a bit, 'cause not a lot of people know him, but I think Sherwood's going to end up being a really good signing for the Canucks down the road here. All right, let's go to some. I mean, these rest of these categories are bad. So let's start with. I'll start with you, Derek. A signing that GMs will regret next offseason. That, well, I shouldn't have signed that guy.
Yeah. I mean, this one, it was hard to differentiate between this and our buyout candidate category. Sorry to give that away.
Pretty close. They're pretty close together, I guess.
Yeah. And so I went with a short-term one because obviously you're not going to buy out a 1 year, 2 year deal, really, usually. And so I'm picking Utah signing Ian Cole to a 1 year, $3.1 million contract. This one had me shaking my head a little bit or scratching my head. I wasn't shaking, just scratching. I mean, Matthew, you're well familiar with Ian Cole. He looked pretty bad for the Canucks at a lot of points last year. I mean, especially come playoff time, the most important time, where he was scratched to plenty. I mean, sure, he blocks a heck of a lot of shots and he hits a lot, but he's very, very slow skating nowadays. He turns over the puck plenty. And he's a puck possession nightmare just in general. He's 35 years old and he's getting the second highest AAV contract of his career. Like it was just weird for me. So obviously not that big of a commitment. It's just 1 year and maybe you deal him at the deadline retained and you get a pick out of it and it's not a big deal, but it just didn't. And I know Utah's they're going to need to get to the cap floor. I don't think they're quite there yet. They might be now actually with Sergachev and stuff in the fold. But yeah, it just didn't make any sense. And even in that regard, just adding another defenseman they do actually have a decent amount of NHL defensemen now after those trades they made and stuff. So just weird.
Yeah, well, Cole wanted the money he got, and Vancouver didn't want to give it to him. So that's why he moved on, and there was a reason for it. The playoffs, he was horrible. Like the regular season, he was okay. I'm like, I didn't mind him. He was pretty good, but either turning over the puck or the puck hitting off him and going into the net. I mean, geez. Yeah, he was a bit frustrating. So I'm actually happy that pretty much I think Derek Forbort's the guy going to be pretty much replacing him, and he is a younger version, pretty much like Ian Cole but younger. Yeah, I think it was an interesting. I was surprised they got the $3 million somewhere. All right, Jacob, what about you? A signing that GMs will regret?
I don't think there were too many this year. There were a lot of good signings. There's a couple that could be kind of on the line a little bit. I'll say one. So I covered the Ottawa Senators. I think that Michael Amadio makes a little bit too much money. So I don't think he would be a buyout candidate at $2.6 million. You're just going to wait that one out. But I don't know if he's going to bring that same kind of play as he did in Vegas back to Ottawa. So he's going to be my pick there. I really hope it works out, and I can see a great path to success for Amadio in Ottawa. And he's going to have great opportunities because they do not have great forward depth. But so I think that it could come back to bite him if he doesn't really stand out. I mean, like they just traded Matthew Joseph, who was making $2.95 million. Is Matthew Joseph that much worse of a player than Michael Amadio? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Amadio's got a bit more experience under his belt, I guess. And he does have a Stanley Cup. I think it's going to end up being a pretty good signing, maybe a little high right now, but we'll see how he does. All right, similar, but maybe not. This is buyout candidates, so most likely to have his contract bought out because there were some long-term deals that could end up being problems for teams down the road that they have to get rid of, and that's happened quite a few times in the last few seasons. So, Jacob, who's your buyout candidate?
I've got a couple here. I'm going to go with Sean Monahan in Columbus. I think $5.5 million for 5 years is a lot. A lot for Monahan. He was much better over the last few years. And obviously after getting traded for along with a first round pick to the Montreal Canadiens, he can't be much worse than that at that point. But I mean, he's a former point per game player, even above that. And last season he almost had 60 points. So not bad, and not bad for $5.5 million. I just wonder if he's going to regress a little bit. And I will say he had 55 points in 83 games. So he played more than a full season. But yeah, I can see him regressing a little bit. He kind of got that spark in Montreal where he was playing in a not so great lineup. And so getting good opportunities, playing with some good wingers, but not a competitive roster. And so I think he kind of flourished with that opportunity. Played about 40 games in Winnipeg between the regular season and the playoffs, scored 25 points. That's fine production, but it was really, he started to slow down at the end of the season. And then the playoffs, he only had 1 point in 5 games. So
yeah, I mean, Columbus is again, I'm not sure what Columbus is going to be this season, and he's going to be their top line center, presumably, and he may be pretty good, but this season, I mean, later on, when they have to again sign a lot of their young guys, they need money, and he may be the one that has to be bought out to sign those guys, which is what happens lately. Derek, what about you? A buyout candidate?
Yeah, I think the easy one, and I think it's not a surprise. I think everybody knows. I think he even knows. Chris Tanev, his contract, 6 years, $27 million. He is 34 years old right now. There's just no way he makes it to 40, unfortunately. Sorry to burst your bubble, Chris. He's a defensive defenseman, one of the best, if not the best defensive defenseman in the entire NHL. And it plays tough minutes every single night, blocks more shots than anybody. And therefore he's very injury prone. And there's no chance. I mean, he's going to give them an excellent 2 or 3 years, and he's going to make that $4.5 million AAV look really good. But I just don't think he's going to be the next Mark Giordano and play, until he's 40. Like, that's just blows my mind. So I think you kind of go into signing that contract, understanding that he may not make it out of that. And that's going to be part of your negotiating probably. I don't think there's any other team that was probably offering 6 years. Maybe they were offering a similar AAV or higher, but I mean, that's why you sign the big or the longer term contracts, just that security. You might sacrifice AAV or maybe a better chance at winning than the Leafs, but yeah, I don't think, I think we're going to be seeing him on the LTIR, and maybe potentially bought out when they need that money. I mean, obviously Matthews and then we'll need a contract eventually, and they're going to need that money.
Yeah. I think injuries is going to be the thing that'll derail that, because he is very injury prone, and how many blocked shots he has, it's ridiculous. I'm surprised he isn't hurt even more often than he is, because he's actually been relatively healthy since leaving the Canucks, which is funny to me because he was always hurt here. All right, we got a few quick ones here. So most likely to be traded at the deadline. Now, these are all probably 1-year deal contracts that we're going to be talking about. But Jake, who's the most likely to be dealt?
I think that this is a very subjective question, but I think that there is a right answer, and that's Alec Martinez out of Chicago. They're not going to be in the playoffs this year. I think, and I said this again a couple of days ago, Matthew, I think they're going to be a lot closer to the playoffs than people are expecting right now. They're not going to be in the playoffs, and signing Alec Martinez to a 1-year deal is a lock to be traded at the deadline. He is exactly what every single contending team wants. He didn't sign for very much money, so he's going to want, I think it was $4 million on the dot. So a team with $2 million in cap space is going to be more than happy to take on Alec Martinez.
100%. Like he's a guy that's a playoff defenseman that you want too. So yeah, definitely. Derek, what about you?
I'm going close to home. Obviously, I cover the Calgary Flames, so I'm going to go with Anthony Mantha. We just signed him to a 1-year, $3.5 million contract. And nobody in the organization will admit it, but this contract, this is exactly what it was signed for, to be traded at the deadline. Mantha's a really unproven commodity. I mean, he scored 20 goals 3 times in his career, but when he's not doing that, he's struggling immensely. It's the epitome of the prove it deal. And essentially it's a first half season audition, basically. Unless he miraculously reignites Jonathan Huberdeau, the Flames aren't going to commit to the 29-year-old long term, as he really doesn't fit our team's rebuilding status. He'd also probably like to win himself, and our team's not going to do so anytime soon. So his best bet is to play his heart out until the deadline, prove to some teams that he's worth investing big money in, go chase a cup and a contract. And the Flames, will happily take a bit of first half production and then some picks or prospects at the deadline. So it's a real win-win.
Well, they just traded Mangiapane for assets and then signed another Mangiapane and then are going to trade him for assets too.
They're both very similar. They're both in that same age range. Mangiapane's a year younger, but both just kind of middle six wingers, and I think they both made the same before Anthony Mantha became a free agent. I think he was at 5.8 million. They made the exact same money too.
There you go. That's a good candidate too. All right, couple for future things. So next player to be signed out of this free agent market, because there are quite a few depth guys still available. Derek, who do you predict to be the next one signed?
I think Adam Bokvist. I don't really actually know how to say it. Bokvist, I think. I'm actually kind of shocked he hasn't been signed yet. I mean, obviously he's been a disappointment, you could say, relatively. He's a former 8th overall pick with Chicago and didn't really pan out there, and then went to Columbus and didn't really pan out there. And now they have a gluttony of right shot defensemen, which is a good problem to have. They don't have room for him, so he's just hanging out. But I mean, that's not every day you see, right shooting defensemen, 23-year-old right shooting defensemen that are just hanging out on the UFA market. So I'm predicting him to go to the Florida Panthers. Bill Zito loves his reclamation projects. And that team, they still need a bit of help on the back end. They got a couple lefties, but they still need to replace the spot of Brandon Montour. Obviously, Bokvist might not do that right away, but he certainly has all of the tools to be good, but he just really hasn't had the right chance, the right fit. So there's really no harm in taking a flyer on him and giving him a little 1-year, just above minimum contract, and maybe he becomes the next Gustav Forsling. You never know.
That's a great one. I had him on my Canucks budget guys that I want the Canucks to sign. So I think he would end up being pretty good here. Jacob, what about you? A next player to be signed?
I don't know how it's not Daniel Sprong. The guy he's going to ask for $2 million, play on the 4th line and score 20 goals and 40 points. Like, you can't ask for anything more out of a single player.
Daniel Sprong. I'm surprised he hasn't been signed now too. I mean, this is a guy that again scored almost 20 goals, or did he score 20 goals?
He had 18 to finish.
18, almost 20 goals. And I'm not sure why a team wouldn't just want to get him again, because he'll be able to do that in your bottom 6. He's done that in the last 2 seasons. All right, last question. Best of the rest. Now, it could be ones you just said, because they're probably up there. Derek, who's the best of the rest for you?
Yeah, I actually had Daniel Sprong for that one.
There you go.
Yeah, but I'll pivot and I'll go Tyler Johnson.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I mean, obviously, I remember watching him play in the WHL way back in the day, and I could tell right then, he was going to be a good player in the NHL, and he has been. He's sort of underrated in my opinion. Obviously a small forward. He's 5'9", I believe, and doesn't weigh 200, not even close. But even on that horrible, horrible Chicago Blackhawks team, he put up 17 goals and 14 assists, that's pretty good, I'd say. Obviously, he wasn't worth I think he made 5 million even, and maybe 5.5 that he had. But I think if a team can pick him up for, $1 million or $2 million on a 1 or 2 year deal, I think that'll be tremendous value. He can really succeed in a lot of different situations. He doesn't need power play time. He's an even strength contributor. And he's speedy. He doesn't need to win. Also, he already has his Stanley Cup, so you have that. But I mean, maybe he continues his kind of mentor role and he signs with, maybe a Columbus or I don't know, another team that has those younger players that kind of needs a little bit of pressure taken off of them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think he still provides tremendous value. And I think he's going to be signed maybe next.
Yeah, Johnson, again, another guy that I'm surprised hasn't signed because, yes, he's not the same player as he was in Tampa, but he's still a pretty effective veteran to be signed. So I think he will be. We'll just see when it is. All right, Jacob, finish it off. Your best of the rest.
There's a whole lot of names still out there. I mean, like you could throw together a 26th place team at this point if you just sign free agents. Like if Gary Bettman just said, you know what, Alex Morello, you can have your team back, but you let me sign them free agents. They could probably be like the 25th, 26th team in the NHL. So I'm just going to throw a couple names out there. James Van Riemsdyk and Kevin Shattenkirk out of Boston. Yeah. Surprised that they didn't get contracts yet. I'm sure they will, no doubt. Cal Clutterbuck, I don't know, I didn't see any announcement on his retirement, although I assume that he is signed and is going to be returning to the New York Islanders. It's just hasn't been announced yet. And then the last three are going to be Ryan Suter, Tyson Barrie, and Kyler Yamamoto. Ryan Suter obviously just got bought out again. He understands the concept of passive income. But then with Yamamoto and Barrie, things were going really well and then not so well. And now they're going to be kind of bargain bin signings, I guess, a couple days from now or a couple weeks. But I think that they have the potential to be fantastic signings. I mean, Barrie's only 32 years old. He didn't have a great season. Things weren't working in Nashville under Barry Trotz. And that was very, very public. And then, of course, Nick Cousins, who isn't signed yet either, who everybody, the players voted and said that he has the most punchable face in the league. So I don't know how a team isn't signing him yet either.
It's funny how we mentioned two guys that I want the Canucks to sign, and not both. I mean, Barrie and Boqvist, either or. I don't think they're going to sign both of them. But again, Barrie's from Vancouver area, and yeah, he would be a pretty good. Apparently, the Canucks have been interested in him in the trade market before, and I wouldn't be surprised if they kick tires on him. Justin Schultz is another one for me. I think he was in Seattle pretty good for the 2 seasons he was there. And I think he could end up being a pretty good signing for some team too. So yeah, lots of good names still on the market that will probably be signed in August, because this is where teams kind of look and like, hey, we didn't get our guys. We re-signed all our guys. Now we have some money to spend. So this is where they look into the bargain bin and sign these remaining. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But thanks, Jacob, Derek, for coming on the show and doing some superlatives and having fun with the free agent market as it stands right now. And make sure to checking out all of our stuff at thehockeywriters.com. We've got the free agent tracker still active. Any signings that do come up will be added to that. And then all the reaction articles that have been already out, take a look at those. And then, of course, all of our off-season content that we have going on. We don't stop writing, even though the hockey is not going on. We start doing the speculative articles and the reviews and all that fun stuff. So check all that out. Check out the Substack. We also got that running with all the different team newsletters with all the articles, all the best articles on the website. Also have the premium tier to take a look at. And but until our next episode, we'll see you next time.